So just to give a little bit of information about us, I think when unfortunately, when we're at school, we've maybe not had the experience of what manufacturing's about, what engineering's about, and we often think of sort of very typical sort of, factory settings where, you're working on a long line with lots of machines, and people are often really surprised to find out that we're actually a manufacturing company. We're based in Allerton Bywater, and we make the water treatment equipment ourselves. So it's just really to sort of share the sort of things that we do. So I joined the company originally 17 years ago. I've previously had a background in sales and customer service. The company was originally started by my dad, who started the business. So it's going on for 28 years ago. And he was a mechanical, electrically trained engineer, and went to work for a water treatment company, which he did for 10 years, and then got to a point where I thought, yeah, we can set up on our own. So we've been going quite a long time, so we're well established. We've got a team of engineers. Some of them have got 30 years experience, some have got a bit less and a bit more. So the key sort of thing that we do that's a little bit different, because we build all the equipment here, we can basically design something to whatever the customer's looking for. So we're really sort of adaptable. And often part of the job is about problem solving. So they'll come to us and say, can you give me water quality that will do this, or can you remove this out of the water? And our challenge is then to go away and work out how to do that in the most sort of cost effective way and in the right, way for the customer. So I always like to talk about team, because the team's really important to us. And I want to talk about the apprentices that we've had in the team that have been probably the most successful. There's a picture there of Jess on the phone. Jess came to us as a business administration apprentice, and she started with us 5 years ago. She completed her apprenticeship, and Jess has progressed in her role. So she's now basically in charge of all the accounts, all the invoicing, any admin. She sort of does everything. She also fixes any IT problems that we have, because she's just very handy. So within 5 years, she's made massive progression. She's a key part of the team. And she's now also training on how to do the wages as the next development. So she's really come on leaps and bounds, and, I can't wait to see where she's going to be in 5 years. We've also got James within our team that came on as an apprentice. So James is the chap that's just to the right of Jess on the picture. James joined us when he was 16, and he's now been with us, I think it's 5 years this year. Joined as a water treatment engineer, went on day release to college to learn some of the electrical side of the business. And he's now probably one of the youngest water treatment engineers in the country, because he's 21 on Friday. He's got 5 years worth of experience within the business. And literally only yesterday, I got yet another email from a customer to say, he'd basically gone above and beyond what was required at a customer. Some really great feedback. He's doing fantastically well. He could be potentially running it in the next 10 years. We've also got lots of different engineers with different levels of experience. We haven't shown them all on there, but they sort of come in, they have a look at a problem, or they look at whatever it is that the customer's doing, and it's their job to go away and work out, right, what can we do to solve that problem? So it's often a bit of a sort of mind bender sometimes. We also look after lots of existing equipment that customers have, and sometimes we'll be going to breakdowns, and it is a little bit high pressured sometimes, because some of our equipment will be feeding a production line, and if we don't get the equipment back up and running very quickly, that's going to cost them quite a bit of money. These are some of the products that we do. These are water softening plants. We do just buy in the water softening plants, which basically soften water. In lots of areas of the country, you have hard water, which then caused really big problems for production. So if you imagine a company's got a huge boiler, if they're feeding that with hard water, you end up with lots of scale on that boiler. So therefore it becomes a lot more inefficient. It takes more energy to heat up that boiler and can be really expensive. So they would normally feed it with a water softening plant. We also build reverse osmosis machines. Now, for those of you who remember looking at osmosis in biology, it is very much exactly as it sounds. It's forcing water through a semi-permeable membrane, so it's reversing that natural process known as osmosis. But it's a very easy way of producing pure water. And I say easy, this equipment is not cheap to buy. It is quite expensive, but it doesn't use chemicals. So it gets away from using chemicals to purify the water. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these type of industries. The bit of equipment that's at the bottom left-hand corner, that RO machine will do 30,000 litres an hour. So it's a huge volume of water. And that was one of the ROs that we built for BMW mini plant down in Oxford. So I can imagine you thinking to yourself, why would they possibly need pure water? What is it in car manufacturing that they need pure water for? And it's really simple. The water from our machines feed their paint shop. So when they're producing the cars, the actual shell of the car goes through like a bath, which adds like a static coating on it, so that when they paint the cars, the paint obviously then sticks to the cars and you get a nice smooth finish with no sort of streaks and smears on. So that's essential for their paint shop. If our ROs don't send them water, it stops their production, which can obviously cost them quite a lot of money. So that's just an example of the type of clients. This is a demineralization plant, which also produces pure water, but it does use acid and caustic to regenerate. So it's a little bit more dangerous. We have to train our engineers for years to make sure that they know how to work around these safely, just because they are dangerous. But for a chemical manufacturing company, for example, they'd already have chemicals on site. But again, you can see from that skid, we build all of that. We do all the pipe work. We put it together. There's a control panel on there. So within the control panel, we will wire all the wires up, put it all together, and then do the controls for these systems, because they often have tanks and pumps and additional kit with them. So the issue we have when we're recruiting is because we want somebody who's electrical biased, but also mechanically biased as well. We need almost sort of a jack of all trades that can do lots of different things. This is just an example of some of the other products that we do, which is sort of general filters, dosing pumps, tanks, and UV systems. We also do boreal treatment. So when the water's been extracted from the ground, because it's passed through the rock strain, we often find that water from borers tend to be really high in iron, manganese. Sometimes it will have sulfate, sometimes it'll have nitrates. It very much sort of depends on the area that we're extracting from. So we don't drill the borers ourselves, but we team up with a borehole driller. They drill the borehole and then we get a copy of the water results so we can see exactly what's in the water and what needs treating. So the system on the left of the screen that's got sort of 5 vessels, we call them water treatment vessels, is a company over in Selby, which is a food manufacturing company. And they decided to go on borehole water because it's a lot cheaper than paying the water bills from the mains. So in a lot of cases, we are dealing with industrial companies that have decided that it's a benefit to them to extract the water, and it's our job to specify the water treatment, work out what we need, obviously install the equipment, and then go out and service it. The picture on the top right with the 3 really big vessels, that's a borehole treatment system at Royal Bolton Hospital. Again, they've decided to use borehole water because basically once you've dug your borehole and you've paid for your treatment, you're in effect not having to pay then for the water that's been extracted. That system treats 60,000 litres an hour, so huge volumes. And we go do regular servicing and water testing every 2 weeks there. So just to give you an example of the type of companies that would have something like that installed. These are just an example of some of the bespoke builds that we do. The system on the left was built to produce pure water for a valve testing company. And the picture at the bottom is showing like the inside of the control panel. So what I would say about the job, the industry, is that it's really varied. You know, one day we can work at, you know, maybe a fairly small company. Other days we're working at some of the larger ones, such as BMW. What's very good about some of these jobs is being able to go to site and go have a look at how they manufacture their product. If you're interested in manufacturing, I've got to say one of the best things about my job is being able to go out, and I've had the pleasure of being able to go down to the Rolls-Royce factory down on the south coast and have a look at how they make the Rolls-Royces. Very clean environment, fairly low production numbers, because obviously the site is selling at a higher volume, but really interesting to go see. And that's just car manufacturing. There's lots of other different industries. We also deal with Lucozade Ribena. So did you know that the same company who make Lucozade actually made Ribena? Not many people know that. And again, they have water treatment on site that we look after. So as I say, we also do service contracts. So half of the business is building new equipment, half of the business is offering service contracts for customers, because the equipment has got moving parts. It needs to be regularly taken apart, greased, serviced, making sure that it's all working properly, especially if it's, you know, a critical process. We say we're really fussy about how we do the job. We have a system of making sure that we do everything thoroughly. It's about making sure they get a full service. We don't just turn up and just write a little report on a computer. We're actually taking things apart and properly making sure that it's all working. We've got a bit of these. This was just an example. The reason I put this feedback on is to give us some idea as to the sort of people that we're dealing with. As you can see, that's the feedback from BMW, who then recommended us to Rolls-Royce. But we also deal with glass companies, because in glass manufacturing, you've got to make sure that you've got no particles, no minerals on the glass, especially in like manufacture of double glazed units, because if you've got, you know, particles in between the glass, it's not going to produce a very good finish. And ICB Brands, again, is a food manufacturing company. So there's quite a lot of different industries that we deal with, that we get to go to. We get to see all these people, and we get to learn about what they do. And part of our job is trying to put together the best solution for them. I've sort of deliberately kept it sort of a little bit brief, because I'm hoping there might be one or two questions that, you know, I can answer that's relevant, that you want to know more about, because I could have done a really long presentation. And it's a bit of a unique industry in the sense that there's not that many other companies that do the same thing that we do. And interestingly, sort of during the whole coronavirus pandemic, we've actually increased our revenues by 20%. Another really good example of the customers we deal with. So this is a hand sanitizer, which is made by a company called Cleanall down in Banbury. And when I last went to see them and said, you know, what's the one thing that you can't make without our equipment? And it's hand sanitizer. We recently shipped off some equipment to Nigeria for exactly that process in the manufacture of hand sanitizer. So although lots of industries have really struggled over the last year, the chemical manufacturers, the manufacturers of hand sanitizers have done really well. And we're quite lucky that we deal with lots of those different types of industries. So that's all I've got to present. Has anybody got any questions?
It's really interesting, Emma. I had no idea that many different industries required the filtered water. So that is really interesting to hear that, and the different clients that you get to work with. I must say that must have been interesting going to see the Rolls Royce.
Yes, it was. And what's more amazing is just like there's a really big gantry. You can go walk across the gantry and look down and see them all being made. And there's a lot more physical people involved. If you go to like BMW Mini, the first part of the process is put together by robots. So a lot of the initial assembly is very fully automated. You know, you don't see anybody in there. There's just all these robots, you know, putting the base of the chassis together. You then go into the next section, and obviously you've got more people, but the rate of production is tremendous there. You're literally watching the next Mini go out. It then gets tested, and it then gets shipped out on basically gets sent on a really big train down to the port. So the rate of production is completely different to like Rolls Royce, when the sort of, you know, because obviously the £500,000 vehicles, if not more, for a Rolls Royce. And they did tell me that if you buy a Rolls Royce, not that I'm ever going to buy one or have the money to, apparently you can pick your own colour. You can say, I want it to be that colour, and they won't sell that colour to anybody else because there's so many different variations of it. And they fly customers in on a private jet to view their Rolls Royce and see, you know, how it's doing, because obviously these people are spending lots of money, so it's really different. The other company I was going to mention, which is the one that the engineers quite like going to, we do loads of water treatment for Red Bull racing. So if anybody's into Formula One, they love going down there just because, you know, it's interesting, and Red Bull are actually very nice at giving you little sort of bits of freebies of you know, obviously the drinks and the hats and things like that. So there's some that they're more keen on than others. We also do, as I say, some work for Lucozade Ribena, which again is quite surprising because they're not using it in their product. They need pure water for the taste testers. And again, this is quite surprising. So when they are testing their product to make sure that it's, you know, exactly the right concentration, they have to cleanse their mouth in between testing, and that's what they use the pure water for.
Wow.
So just a couple of really sort of strange ones. I'm trying to think of the more bizarre ones. We also do a lot of work for a company who manufacture artificial limbs. So they make artificial hips. So the water's got to be basically completely sterile. So again, we go out and put a system in and then sort of service it. So I think the thing, personally for me, that I love about it is like I said, being able to go out and see how things are made. You know, if you're interested in that type of thing, actually being able to go out and think, yeah, we've contributed in some way towards that end product being made.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it does definitely sounds really interesting in that element. So in terms of a typical day of the engineer then, would that include travelling across the country to all these different sites?
Yeah, and it's at one point we were doing social media posts and we tried to do a bit of a typical day, which is a bit tricky to do because every day is different. So I'll give you an example of a few days. So if they're travelling further afield, such as down south or Wales, because we do cover the whole of the UK, we probably don't venture very much into sort of Cornwall and Kent. It's sort of very much the trunk of the country, but it is quite a big area, because as much as we're based in Yorkshire and we like doing business in Yorkshire because it's easy for us to, you know, get to the customer quickly. Some of our customers have got sites all over the country, so obviously we've got to be able to cover that. But yeah, they might start at, you know, 6:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, travel down to site, go do some work on that site, and it might be just a general service work. It might be an installation. When we're installing the equipment at BMW, they literally stayed down in Oxford for 2 weeks at a time. You know, they'd stay like Monday to Friday, come back at the weekend, which is unusual to do that, but there is sort of often quite a few sort of overnights. We look after a hotel that's in Wales, that's on the coast in Wales. It's a really lovely hotel, but they've got a boreal treatment system. And every time the engineers go down there, they don't have to, but they have to go in the sea, even when it's freezing. So, they went down in January, recorded it. They have to, like literally up to the waist. They're completely bonkers, went in just to sort of show, right, we can do it. So they often sort of have, or they might even have a day that maybe it's a local day and they're just going to be around Yorkshire. And, we call it quite an easy day around Yorkshire because, it's a nice area and, we can get there quickly. And they might go do 3 or 4 sort of service visits. But they could also have a day where they're back at the workshop and they're building all day. Do you know what I mean? When we're recruiting people, we're often looking for, we want to recruit for attitude because obviously we can train in certain areas, but also that they're going to want to be part of a team because that's a really big part. I think that's been the hardest bit during coronavirus, that we've had to work apart obviously as much as possible, but there has been some jobs where people need to stand side by side, and trying to manage that because they are used to working as a team. So yeah, it's really varied. Even the work that I do in the office, which I'm in the office a lot of the time, it is really varied what's coming in because we deal with so many different types of industries. But that's what makes it interesting,
Yeah, I mean, it does sound really quite unique, which I imagine would be a pull for a lot of people. It doesn't sound like you'd ever get bored.
No. It's often hard, even to recruit from that point of view because it's trying to explain that, when we're looking for an apprentice to take on, we understand that they're going to come to us and we're going to be providing the training, but ideally we want somebody who's sort of saying to us, well, I like using tools, I've maybe helped out, at home, I've got a little bit of experience in the sense that I've at least sort of held tools in my hand as such. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So in terms of kind of other things that you might look for in an applicant, would it be things like work experience or something that they've maybe gone out and done some volunteering in their own time? Would it be things like that?
Yeah, and and really what you're looking for is somebody who is that shows sort of almost under attitude. So the experience that they've got, it doesn't really matter whether it's relevant to our industry because let's face it, most of the time it isn't. It's showing that it's that sort of person that's wants to progress. Do you know what I mean? We want somebody who's sort of hungry and wants to come to us and say, come on, tell me where I can be. I always ask the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Because I want to know that they're thinking about their career progression. And obviously when we take somebody on, we want them to stay with us. Do you know what I mean? We want to give you a career. It's not just a job, it's a career, because once you get into the industry, you generally don't leave it.
And it sounds like there's some real perks as well, working for a family-owned business. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, the family that's in the business, there's myself and the other director, who's my brother. We've worked together for the last 17 years, and we've solely run the business for the last sort of 8 years. So I think in any family business, there's a challenge, working with each other, but we've done it for that long now. We've sort of, got a clear direction. And also the fact that it doesn't matter that other people working in the business aren't family, because they are family in effect to us. Do you know what I mean? We do look after each other. And like one of the engineers got married not last year, the year before, and invited everybody to the wedding, which was lovely. And we shut the office for the day. We just said that's more important. Everybody's having that Friday off so we could all go to the wedding, because it was more important that we all were there and we wanted to be there and celebrate with him. So it was great.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really nice. And in terms of apprenticeship opportunities then, do you offer those quite regularly, or is it as and when you need somebody?
Yeah, we do. And that's the only thing that, COVID has slowed down, because we did take on an apprentice last year, but because an apprentice needs to work side by side with somebody in our industry, especially because it's potentially, we're not working in really dangerous environments. We're not working at power stations, but obviously some of the equipment that we work on, can be dangerous. And that's the difficulty that we've had, is that, again, we really could do with yet again another apprentice, but we need social distancing guidelines to be a little bit more relaxed, because we want them to learn from our experienced engineers and be with them all the time.
Right. So I suppose that would prove an issue if they were travelling down to site together. Is that the issue?
Yeah. And we have taken on apprentices who can't drive yet, so they've got, they've sort of in effect got to be with another engineer. I mean, don't get me wrong, if we've got an engineer who can drive, we'll get them in a vehicle as soon as possible, because you do only learn by having that driving experience. But you wouldn't want to send somebody who's newly passed the test to go navigate all the roads down south if they're not feeling confident. So ideally we'd want them with another engineer, with them driving with the other engineer with them, just to make sure we're not, throwing them in at the deep end. So yeah, it's slowed that down. But what I would say is, obviously thinking about the future, things are moving on. We'll be looking to take on an apprentice, certainly, by the time we get to sort of June this year, and we're able to do those things safely.
Brilliant. And in terms of recruitment, what's kind of a typical recruitment process that an applicant would go through?
So the recruitment process with us, we normally tend to, sometimes we've advertised, we've gone out to the colleges and actually said, this is what we're looking for. When we recruited Jess, although she actually lived really near to us, it was actually the college who recruited her, which was great for us, because she met, they did a lot of the qualification for us. So it depends who we're looking for. If we're looking for apprentices, we would generally sort of go potentially college route. We would put sort of some advert on like a local Facebook group, because that's often where we sort of tend to find people. And I say local because if you're young and you're an apprentice, you're maybe not going to want to travel that far to be able to come to work. And again, you might not be able to drive. But the process that they would have to follow would be, firstly, to send a covering letter with a CV. There's so many people that don't send a letter, because what we want to know is, why do you want the job? Do you know what I mean? Just to spend a couple of lines. This is why I'm interested. I've researched your company. I can see what you do. We want a bit of, interest to start with. It doesn't matter if they don't know exactly what we do, but there's so many people that don't bother to do that. Spelling errors on CVs are a bit of a bugbear for me, because it doesn't matter if somebody will say, well, I'm not very good at English. Well, if you're not very good at English, get somebody else to check through your CV, because what that's telling me is you've spent the time to make sure that it's right. So a really good, you can often show a lot about yourself by just, doing a nice sort of covering letter, really. So we do that. We then invite somebody in for the first interview. We'd have a little bit talk about the job role, so they know a little bit about what we do. And then generally with apprentice engineers, we will try and bring them in for 2 or 3 hours for the second interview, just so they get a really good feel about what we do and whether they think that the job's a good fit. And obviously for us, we've got to make sure that they're a good fit for the team. So that's the sort of process. We do 2 interviews in effect. And obviously, hopefully, we want to make sure people are as relaxed as possible, so that we get the best out of them on interview.
Brilliant. And in terms of kind of site visits and things like that, I know obviously with COVID at the minute we are restricted, but is that something you could accommodate for any students that were particularly interested in the future?
It's possible, and it depends on the site, because sometimes we might be working in an area that's separate to the main factory. We might be working in a boiler house, for example, and then we've got a chance of taking somebody in to have a look at what the customer does. And again, our workshop's not huge, but you can certainly sort of socially distance to some extent. So yeah, it's a possibility. Like you say, unfortunately, because of restrictions at the moment, it's trickier, but yeah, in the future, it's a possibility.
That'd be great. Thank you. So I think I saw a message pop up to say some of the students are having to change lessons now. So I'll leave it there for today now, Emma, but we really appreciate your time. It was really interesting insight. And if any more questions do come through after, then I can always send those over if that's okay.
Yeah, by all means, email those through, you know, and I'd love to answer them. As I say, it's one of those things that it's a shame that lots of people don't know more about what type of manufacturing industries they are, especially, as I say, with smaller businesses like us. So yeah, if you've got any questions, then come through.
That's lovely. Well, thank you for your time today and take care.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.